Welcome to another recording for Tole. This project is for February 2024 and I'm calling it Key to My Heart. Anyway, one of the first things you want to do is, after you order your surface, which you can get from Palette and Sawdust in the United States or from Southern Ridge Trading Company in Canada, you want to give your surface a coat of buttermilk. Once this dries, you want to sand it lightly. And then what we're going to do is we are going to give the background a treatment, something that we've done, that you've probably done many times in the past. But I'm going to take some poodle skirt pink and I want to thin it down quite a bit. And I'm going to put this wet, very wet and loose coat of poodle skirt pink onto this surface. And let's see how quickly I want to work quickly so it doesn't dry. And then I'm going to take a piece of saran wrap. And I'm sure you all remember this. I've used this piece, so I'm going to lay it over the surface and just kind of push it down and crunch it. Get yourself some wrinkles in there. We just want to add, as you know, my favorite word, we just want to add some interest to our background. So I'm going to pull this up, and so what I've got is a nice pale pink background. I didn't want it to be real stark, and I'm going to let this dry, and then I'm going to apply the pattern for my design. Alright, so I have my pattern applied, and I tried to do it as lightly as I can because most of this painting is going to be done with washes of color and floats, very well blended out floats of color, and our palette is going to be very limited, just 3 or 4 colors. So what I want to do first is I want to float some very well blended out cinnamon drop around this border that I've lined in there or put the pattern on for. So you want to blend that out really well. You want this to be a really soft float of cinnamon drop. You don't want it to blare at you and be like just a line of cinnamon drop. Suggestion is I would have a mop brush handy so that I can soften that float out even more. So I'm going to start at a corner, and you can see how softly that's been blended out. I'm just going to come along, and now if I want to darken this, I can always pick up more color. But it's better to start softer than it is to start too dark. Okay, so I'm just going to continue around, floating on this border. You can see right here where I met floats. I want to try to soften and blend that out so it's not so much of a start-stop area. If that makes any sense. Just a nice soft float of cinnamon drop. All the way around. So I'll probably fast forward through some of this. See, I got that a little darker, but I'm okay with that. I may go back and darken up that other edge. All the way around. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and this area right here I feel like needs a little bit more color. So I'm gonna come in there and deepen that a little bit. It's much easier to deepen than to try to take away. All right, let's see. And any place else? I think maybe along this bottom I'll give it another little float just to darken it a little bit. So you see it's kind of a go back and forth and figure out what you like or don't like. Okay, I think I'm going to leave that alone for a minute. I'm going to go in and these larger flowers, I'm going to go ahead and float those petals in with this cinnamon drop. For someone who doesn't like floating a lot, I'm sure going to use it a lot in this piece. I want to let that petal dry before I go to the next one. So just a light touch. And again, I'm going to let that petal dry. I just wanted to do something a little different this time. Something out of the ordinary for me. Let's go back here. Finish this one. So right now I'm just floating in the tips of these petals. I will come back and add some floating at the base of the petals also. And I forgot to put the pattern in here, but you can see a little bit of a petal in this hole on the key. So I'm going to go ahead and just fudge that in there. I'm going to finish off this guy and then go back and finish off the last set of those 3 petals. It won't take long and you'll start getting a feel for how much paint to pick up and how much to blend it out. All right. I'm going to go ahead. There are some little tiny flowers, just little stroke flowers. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. So 2 at the top, 2 at the ends, and 2 off to the sides. And they have just little oval, what do I want to call it? Where the flower petals come out of. So I'm just going to go in and float those ovals in. I'm going to do one side and then I'll come back and do the other. This guy, there's one that peeks out of the cutout on the key again over here, so you just want to get a little bit of color in there. Let's see, we have one here. Now you can use a smaller flat brush if you want. I'm using a 3/4 inch. It's just the brush I grab when I'm gonna go paint. So it's the first brush I grab. But if you want to use a smaller brush, please go right ahead. So now I can come in and complete that oval by painting the other side in. Except for that one. All right, we're getting there. I'm going to go back to these larger flowers and I'm going to float down into the base of them. And this is still with very well blended out cinnamon drop. And it's probably going to look a little messy until we get to the end. But I'm okay with messy for a while. Got a little dark on that. But it worked out. Okay. Don't try to hurry. It usually doesn't help. And this one I'm just going to go around the inside of that cutout on the key. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to go back to this outside rim and I want to float on the outside edge with some very well blended out cinnamon drop. just want to make that border just a little bit more, what do I want to make it stand out just a little bit more. The outside edge will be much easier than that inside edge was. So let's go ahead and these larger comma stroke looking leaves, there are 4 of them. Let's go ahead and float those in, and this is going to be done with that cinnamon drop also. Said it's a very limited palette. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to float in the top, the wider part of the comma stroke, and then I'll come back and float the rest of it in. And I am kind of walking that color down a little bit so it kind of fills up that comma stroke a little. And now you can see why it was important for you to get the pattern on lightly. All right, these little flowers, I'm going to use a round brush and a wash. So I'm going to make a wash of cinnamon drop, and I'm just going to do some little comma stroke petals, maybe. For these little flowers here. This is where you get to show your skill, right? I'm not doing them in one stroke, and I'm definitely not going to get all those petals on there. I'm only going to get 5. 5 is a good number. But if you're really good with your round brush doing comma strokes, you can probably get a few more. But for me, I think 5 is going to do it. So wherever those little ovals are that we painted in, you want to add at least 5 petals. All right, starting to come to life, I think a little bit. So I'm going to go back and finish these larger common stroke leaves. Again, with just a very well blended out float of cinnamon drop. All you're doing is filling in the little tails a little bit. Let's go ahead and do the little ovals at the base of those larger flowers. And those are going to be done the same way we did the ovals for the little daisy-like looking flowers. So I'm just going to come in and float one half, and then I'll come back and float the other half. All right. I say we work on these calyxes on the larger flowers. Again, cinnamon drop, we're not changing colors at all. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to float one side of each of those, and then I'll come back and float the other side in a minute or two. And those got a little darker than the flower itself, and that's perfectly okay. See, I saw a place where I needed to do a couple more floats. All right. I really want to go to these larger common strokes and deepen at the point. So I'm going to come in and float those again. looks better. Trick is to keep your hand out of what you just painted, right? But that's the trick on anything you paint. All right, one more. Okay. So what I want to do before I get too terrible far is I'm going to float this inside edge around the border. And I think I'm going to do that with warm white. We're actually going to pull in a third color. A fourth color, actually. But here again, you want to blend it out. You don't want it to be real stark. So blend it out so it's a nice soft float. And let's get in here and kind of clean up that border a little bit. I think that's going to make a nice difference. Cool. Yeah, that looks much better. I also want to take this warm white and I want to highlight the tops of these petals on these larger flowers. And that just kind of helps to separate them even a little more from those calyxes at the base of the petals. Okay, let's go ahead and highlight with warm white one side, the outside edge of each of the ovals at the base of those little daisy-like flowers. So just little highlight. Doesn't really matter which side you do. This one I did the bottom, so I'm not going to get in there. And this one I did the outside. All right. We can go ahead and highlight the tips of those larger common stroke leaves with warm white also. Okay. So now what I want to do is I actually want to float some very well blended out cinnamon drop around the outside of this heart and on either side of the little handle on the heart. I also want to float it inside the keyhole. So again, blend it out well. And I'm going to go inside the keyhole first. I mean inside the handle first. And I'll go inside the top of the keyhole. Then I'm going to get out a larger flat brush to do the float around the heart. I'm going to go ahead and use my 3/4 inch. Still want to blend it out really well. I'm going to start up here towards the handle. You can see I've blended it out a lot. I'm going to go down here. It's a little easier for me to see my pattern. And let's go ahead and mop that to soften it. And come around the other side. And around the top of that handle. And mop again. Now I want to do inside the handle up against the heart. And let's see, need to finish off this keyhole. A little dark, but you know what, it'll be okay. The keyhole needs to be a little darker. Otherwise it wouldn't be a hole. I'm going to go back to my smaller brush. And I'm going to float the outside, all around this outside edge of the key. This This is going to be a little bit heavier. You don't have to blend it out quite as much, but you do want to have your mop brush handy. So I'm going to go up against the heart first and darken that. And then I'll go on this end of the key. Just going to bounce around on the key a little bit so that I can try to get nice even floats without wiping too many out. Let's go over here, go next to the heart, and you can see it's a little darker. There's that little notch thing. We want to float that in. See, float another tooth in. Clean out that inside there. And let's go ahead and float the bottom of the top of the key. I'm going to go back to the other side of the key and float in another edge of a tooth. I'm going to float across this top edge of the key. Go in here. So wherever there's an edge, you're going to float next to it. This is where you can straighten up your key a little bit if it got a little wonky when you put your pattern on. I'm going to come here, go around the top of the key. Okay, let's see. I can go here. Probably gonna have to look at your key and kind of decide, did I float there yet or not? do the bottom of all of these teeth. Might as well do this little area right here. It's starting to look like a key. Okay, I'm going to go back to this, the top of the key. And I'm going to float on the key around those cutouts. Another one on this side. All right, let's go back to this side of the key. And I'm going to do those little vertical spots. Almost done with the key. Doing the last little areas. I think I need to do this side. Okay. And then we just have to float around the cross cutout. All right. So what I'm going to do, just to clean up some of these areas in here, I'm going to take a liner brush and some thin, warm white, and I'm just going to paint those in with this wash of white, just to clean up areas that need to be cleaned up. because you're gonna get pink in there. I don't care how hard you try. It's gonna happen. When you get up to these flowers, where these flowers are, you want to go as close as you can to them. Line a little in between the petals. Okay, now we also need to do these guys. Get out a round brush, a little bit bigger. Just to clean it up a little bit. And don't forget you have a petal poking through on this one. So you want to go around that petal. Kind of went out right there. All right. So one thing I do want to do on this key is I do want to do a little bit of dry brushing of warm white. So I'm going to take one of my smaller brushes for dry brushing, and I'm going to dry brush a little bit of warm white in on the key. Just to give it a little bit of dimension, I guess is what I'm looking for. I'm just going to go kind of top center on this side, down into those little teeth a little bit. Just to give it a little bit more dimension. When I get over here again, top, through the center of this little base, at the base of the top of the key, and then I'm just gonna tuck some highlighting in wherever my brush will fit, actually. Alright, so I'm going to call the key done. Let's get our liner brush out. A little one would be great. I can find my little one back. Here's my little one. This is a 6/0. I'm going to line these stems to all the flowers, and that's going to be with thin cinnamon drop. So the first ones are going to be these larger flowers, and basically you just kind of line them and fill them in. They're kind of thick. Right. And let's see, two more. Nothing too scary. Alright. And then we want to line the stems on those little daisy-like flowers. And they're just regular old lines, nothing to fill in. This one you're not gonna C. And this one goes behind the key. So the only full one you have is right here on the right side. I didn't have enough water in my brush. It's not going to go very far if I don't have more water in my brush. And just a little hiccup to clean. All right, it's looking pretty good. What I want to do next is I want to just outline the edge of these little petals, these larger petals, and that again is with thinned cinnamon drop. I can't believe I'm having trouble thinking of the color. I'm only using a few. Just to define those a little bit more. So it won't take too long to do that. Don't forget the one that's inside the keyhole. So one of the next things I want to do is just a hair below the top edge of each of these petals, there's some little stitching that is done with thinned cinnamon drop. There I go again. So just little bitty stitches. I also want to take some thinned cinnamon drop and I'm going to add some little lines that go up from the point of these larger comma strokes towards the top. Again, just adding a little bit more interest to them. It's just like 3 lines. All right. go back to our heart. Let's work on this handle. Now it's going to get a float on all four sides of the handle, still with cinnamon drop. You might as well put the buttermilk and the poodle skirt pink away because we're not going to use them again. So I'm going to go first next to the heart. And I'll let that dry. Let's go ahead and float on the outside edge of the heart with some blended out cinnamon drop. Let's get the other side done. Blended that a little too much, I think. All right, that's looking pretty good. Now we can go back to our handle and we'll float one side. And then we'll come back and float the other side in a little bit. Let's go ahead and work on these. I'm going to straighten up my keyhole a little bit. It looks a little wonky. I think that's a little better. Work on these comma strokes here in the bottom, and just like we did the ones next to the flowers, we're going to go ahead and float those in with some very well blended out cinnamon drop, of course. So I'm going to do the tops of them first. I'm taking my time with the floats. I'm not going to hurry them up. go ahead and float these hearts the same way. I'm going to do the tops first. I think I can go back to the handle now and float the top edge. I think I want to deepen, I'm just looking at this, and I want to deepen the shading right here on the key a little bit. And I missed one spot right there. Don't want to forget that. All right. I think let's go ahead and float. There's a trim around here, so much like we did the outside border, I want to do the inside border of the heart too. And it is a little wider at the top than it is at the bottom. I think that's looking nice, if I say so myself. And since I'm the only one talking here, I guess I have to say so myself. All right, we're getting closer and closer. Let's go ahead and finish off these comma strokes and hearts. And I'm just going to tuck the color into the point. I'm going to work on one side on those just a little bit easier. Let's go ahead and do the bottoms of the hearts. All right, looking pretty good. I want to deepen the top and the bottom of the keyhole. So I'm going to come back in and float it one more time. And try to do it without getting paint all over. And let's go into the bottom. All right. All right, there are some, oh, I saw some little comma strokes. There are some little comma strokes off to the side here. We're just going to go ahead and paint those in with a liner brush. So they'll just be like regular old comma strokes. I hope, right? We can always dream, right? And I should keep dreaming because that didn't come out at all like I wanted it. So we'll just take it off and try it again. Too much water. Try on this side. And I'm really not stroking them on, I'm painting them on. Because that's easier than trying to stroke them on. And, oh, I wiped off my other one. So we'll just have to wing it, right? And it's a little high, but it'll be okay. I want to go ahead and outline the keyhole. Just want it to stand out a little bit more. Right, we've got some, I don't know, curved shapes in a couple places on the heart. So what I want to do is I'm going to take a round brush. This is a 4. And I'm just going to paint those in with a wash of course, cinnamon drop, right? Easier than trying to float them in. And then these two down here. Carried away here. Sorry, I have the hiccups. And I have to finish up these comma strokes. Okay. We need to float these shapes that are around the heart, because they wouldn't look right if we filled them in. So I'm just gonna float those shapes in. Getting really close. One more little float there. Okay, we're going to do a little bit of dry brushing with warm white. So get out your little dry brush again. And I'm going to dry brush highlighting through the center of this handle. And in the top of this border on the heart. I also want to dry brush a little highlighting in the tops of the hearts. And I also want to do it inside these larger comma strokes. Now, these shapes right here, these things that look kind of like eyebrows, I'm going to add some lines to those, and that's with thin cinnamon drop. I actually ran out. I had my little nickel-sized puddle and I used it all up. This is some thin cinnamon drop, and I'm just going to line some little stripes inside those. Just to add some details. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing to these little smaller eyebrow looking ones. All right. Need to do something behind these hearts. Haven't decided what yet. I think I'm just going to outline those shapes. With a line of cinnamon drop. It's a nice thin line. I'm going to outline the hearts also. So let's add a highlight inside the keyhole with a line of thin warm white. Either side is fine. Oh, that helps. Let's also add a highlight to the hearts. A couple little comma strokes. And I think what I want to do is I want to get out a stylus. I know I have one somewhere. And I'm going to add some dots to the background behind the hearts. Doesn't really matter which size stylus you use. Get some old paint off mine. And I'm going to use warm white. And I'm just going to dot. They're kind of graduating, descending dots. And I think that perks that up a little bit. And if there's other places you want to add dots, please be my guest. It's your piece. You can do what you want. I'm just here giving you suggestions. Okay. I do believe that these little eyebrow guys need to be outlined, and I am going to outline them with warm white. So your little liner brush and some thin warm white. Let's just outline those guys. It's going to make them stand out a little bit more, and it's also going to clean them up a little bit. All right, let's go through, and on the little daisy-like flowers, we did a highlight float on their bases, but I want to add a touch of warm white, like a more definite highlight in those on the highlighted side, and it's just a touch, nothing major, except for that one I decided to make it major, but we'll fix it. On these comma strokes, I want to add a highlight to them also. And it's just going to be a smaller comma stroke inside those larger comma strokes. Just to kind of oomph them up a little bit. Alright, let's see, what else can I do? I'm going to highlight the other larger petals with a little comma stroke on them also. Trying to keep my hands out of things I just did. All right, let's look at this thing and see what we want to do. I think what we need to do is we need to add stitching around this border. And let me see. If you have a white paint pen, you might be able to get by using that. And I'm just going to add some stitching along this border. Much faster than a brush and paint, but if you don't have a paint pen, your liner brush and some warm white would work just fine. So I think once we get done with this, we can go through and erase any pattern lines that are still showing. And I think we can call this done. So just a little bit of a different design using a limited palette and mostly floats of color. I hope that you've had fun experimenting with me. And that you enjoy painting this piece. And you know, if you wanted to do it with more red, you could pick a nice red color instead of a pink, or you could do it in just about any color you want. Purple, blue, whatever color strikes your fancy. But let me back off here so you can get a look at mostly my brushes. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this piece and that you'll give it a shot. It's nice to challenge ourselves by limiting our palettes sometime. And like like I said, no lettering, just simple floats and washes of color. So I'll see you next month as I created a piece for Easter for you for this Tole Town presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. And I hope you have a wonderful Valentine's Day.